Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET Now special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. It is our endeavor to help you address questions on each and every aspect of your business with our panel of experts. We do understand the issues that you face, and this is the only daily MSME platform in the country which deals with the MSME space. Today we're talking about education, and I'm in conversation with Vaidheeswaran. He's the MD and CEO of Manipal Global Education Services. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. Let's start this conversation off by talking about how the field of education and the education industry and sector has really changed over the past decade, and what in your mind will be the biggest disruptor going forward in this space?
In my view, the single largest disruption that is happening in education, and more specifically learning in a digital world. I'm being specific when I'm saying learning in a digital world rather than a digital learning, because everything that is possible to be done in the learning in a digital world has got completely disrupted over the last couple of years. Let's look at the role of technology in the way it has disrupted learning. Today you could have the pedagogy which is for ensuring attention span. You have very limited attention span in the world today. Nothing beyond of, let's say, a 7 minutes YouTube will catch anybody's attention. So you need to ensure that the richness of content that you deliver to your learners is made in short spans of time. It is made at a convenience where he or she is able to learn at their space, at their time, and in the mode in which they would like to learn. So it could be when they are maybe driving down to their office if they are working somewhere, or if they are at home late evening watching a show, they want to switch off and listen to a YouTube. So you are today in a position to access high quality content and bring it to learners in a very short period of time, in a time and mode in which they are able to learn. I think this is, today we are talking in India about the demographic dividend, which is, we are going to be the youngest nation in the world. I think you must add the third D, which is digital, along with the demographic dividend, to make it more relevant in the way education is getting imparted in the country today.
Since you just spoke about digital, I want to take that point forward and talk about digital and technology, but particularly with regards primary education in India. How can technology be used to change this?
So I think in a country like India, the first issue which we need to acknowledge and address is the vastness of the country, the geographical access limitation that we have, given that we have such a large country with difficult terrains to reach. And then we have, of course, the issue of language. We have different languages and dialects that are spoken in the country. So at a primary education level, one way of possibly addressing these issues is to reach education through the digital format, which means that you actually collapse the concept of space. Somebody is sitting in, let us say, in eastern UP in a remote village near Barabanki as an example, and you could conveniently reach that primary school through sitting in a more, let's say, space where you have technology access, where you have bandwidth, and beam through VSAT and other technology modes to those schools. The second advantage that I see that we could potentially do is to looking at the teacher-student ratio. If you have to physically have the teachers available in the primary schools to teach all subjects, the number of teachers that we would require would be significantly larger. So perhaps you could have one teacher in a class physically in the classroom in a school where he or she is able to administer the students in terms of discipline, learnability, etc. And there are different teachers sitting centrally in other parts of the country where they are able to leverage technology and reach out and teach these children. So I think that could be one way in which the digital India could successfully penetrate into primary education in our country.
How about education in rural India? As of now, do you think that there is a sufficient revenue model to justify more companies which are necessarily looking to make profits at this space?
Yes, I think in my view, the question is never of whether if there is a need for private-public participation in education, but it is how effectively can private-public participation happen, and companies getting involved in, like Manipal, our own example, involved in the space of education, can bring in operational efficiencies, can bring in access to good technology, can bring in access to good content, can improve on pedagogy, and they can ensure that the cost per learner, if that is a parameter that we want to use from a financial standpoint, bring in more efficiencies, and it could collapse the cost cycle and improve margins in terms of the revenue model as what is being asked of. So I think there is an immense possibility to deliver good quality education at a cost efficient basis and also make margins.
How can quality education be imparted to the masses? You were just talking about digital, and that to a large extent, I presume, can be used to improve the quality. But maybe you can start by talking about your own example and how it can be broad-based to a wider audience.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So quality to me has two parts. One is the content of what we deliver from an education standpoint, and the second is the pedagogy, which is the faculty, the way they are able to translate the knowledge into the learning community. So the first one, when we talk of as content, today the access to global content is becoming something so easily available. As an example, we have tied up for the entire alumni of Manipal with Coursera, Coursera being the world's largest MOOC that you have today. So we have access to very high rich content in a variety of subjects, which can be made available to the learner community across the country and maybe in other parts of the globe as well. So content, I think today is becoming something easily accessible, and thanks to public domains and open source coding and so on and so forth, it is no longer a privilege of a section of people who will hold control on content. The second, I think, is this whole issue of faculty, and as I gave an example a little while earlier, the faculty could become a hub and spoke model where the good quality faculty is centrally located, and their expertise can be made available to a larger section of the student community across the country by leveraging and harnessing technology, the VSAT as an example that I talked about. And then today there is a whole lot of opportunities available for good ways of pedagogy, where we, for instance, have smart applications that we have put in our apps, in our learning platforms for our students, where there is a lot of self-learning material possibility that students can do. They can take on quizzes as they are again maybe driving down to their college or to their office. They will know that how they have fared in the subject that they are presently learning. And then it will also give them a link to say if they are needing to let's say refurbish their learning or refresh their fundamentals of the subject. They would be directed or navigated to good quality links that they could access and learn the subject. So either in terms of the pedagogy, in terms of content, and leveraging technology is making companies and institutions like Manipal disseminate good quality education in a most effective manner to students across the community.
To ensure more long-lasting reforms in the field of education, what are some of the biggest changes one must see in the sector?
2-3 areas which I think could be, and it's not really a full list of all reforms needed to be done. I think there must be a way to improve teacher-student ratio and facilitate more flexible faculty recruitment and norms in the country, including using educated housewives who need to take breaks in when they let's say they raise a family, but use their knowledge and leverage technology for them to teach subjects, etc. So there must be, the first reform in my view would need to be in terms of more flexible approach to the faculty's time, qualifications, etc. The second area that I think we need to be really looking at is building schools of excellences in different these things by partnering of colleges and institutions, rather than every college or every university trying to participate and make schools of excellences in all the disciplines. We could have in city wise, we could have schools of disciplines done so that we are able to leverage the needs of the country. The third reform that I think is certainly required is make it more facilitative for private corporates and private industries to participate in higher education in the country, and allow them to successfully run educational institutions, and if there are profits that they generate, allow it to be run like any other company, and ensure that they are allowed to disseminate the profits or distribute the profits to their shareholders and so on and so forth. You would have high quality corporates who are running good industries to also then start actively participating in the education space. And in a country like India, where we are targeting a gross enrollment ratio of 30% in the next 5 to 6 years, we will need a large population of our youth to be going through formal education in the next coming years. And in my view, it is alone for state to participate in this initiative will be suboptimal. We need a good policy and a reform that the state and the private sector join hands to make this happen. So these are some of the reforms that I think would need to do. And the last one is really to make it as less regulated as possible. We must have high level of transparency for educational institutions to talk about. Maybe you should have independent rating agencies. We will come and rate these people, but depending on the quality of rating that universities and institutions get, they must have high level of green channel like situations where they are in a position to offer new courses, adapt new pedagogy, make changes into the curriculum, and so on and so forth. These would be some of the reforms that come to my mind that we need to do.
Since we're talking about reforms and regulation, I want to talk to you about the role of government in education. How do you work with the government on education and the quality of education imparted based on your own experience and your own advice for viewers? How can they then collaborate with the government?
So yes, I think, as I said, if you look at the numbers today, we have something like 750 universities in the country between private and public, and maybe 30,000 to 40,000 colleges which are addressing the higher education needs of the country. And if we need to get into a gross enrollment ratio of 30%, we are talking of adding 25 million more students into the higher education in the next 4 to 5 years. So my view would be that this is a huge task. We would need brick and mortar universities to coexist with online education. It would be virtually impossible for us to only satisfy the higher education needs by putting physical universities, which something like a college needs to come up every 6 days in this country. So I think that would be an impractical thing, both from an infrastructure standpoint and a cost standpoint. So the country must harness online and digital education, distance education, which seems to be clearly the global trend across. And we must have facilitative regulatory norms that the government should work in close coordination with the learning community and the private sector, and put on such of those where students have a multiple choice of the type of education that they want to do. They can continue to upskill themselves as they start working in the country today. And some of these would need to be made in a way which is easy for people to come in. The less the regulations, the more it is going to be easier for people to come in. And I think it is in line with the government's policy of talking about less governance in the system, on how could they get it to less government and more governance, as they say. I think we would need a similar thing to be adopted in the higher education or in the overall education space for that matter.
Now, even as the government is talking about Skill India, how do we ensure practical application of this?
Yes, I think the Skill India is a great initiative that the government is focusing on, and in the country today, it is a fact that somebody would rather do, let's say, a basic degree from an average quality institute and find themselves jobless, as compared to, let's say, going and doing a skill program on plumbing, and become that much more entrepreneurially employed. Today, how many of us at our household find this shortage of electricians and plumbers that when we need them at home? So on one end there is an acute shortage of skilled manpower, and the other end there is a difficulty and at a concept level to say that why would I need to do skill. So we need to address this at the perception level, and at the actual skill level. I think that there is government is taking several steps, and the private sector needs to work hand in hand with them to put up changes in the Polytechnic Act of the country, put up changes in the Diploma Acts of the country, make skill as a credit course, so that if there are 5 skills that, as an example, somebody picks up over 3 to 4 years of their study, you could accumulate the skills and make it as a degree in a skill of a certain basket of skills.
What about technical education? We hear so many companies say employees are not adequately skilled when they join. We're talking about the quality of education earlier, but more in the context of primary education. How about the quality of students who are entering the workforce? Is it necessarily the effort or the problem or the issue of companies which then need to reskill these students to make them more suitable for roles for which they've been hired for?
Yes, you see, what is happening today in higher education is we have a curriculum which has been designed in for engineering or technical education, as you're saying, which is not amenable for quick refurbishing. Something that was set up, if you continue to do, let's say, in an electrical engineering as a subject on valve theory, when the world has moved on to microchips and VLSIs, there is a disconnect between what a student he or she learns and what is expected in the world. So one couple of ways to do the integration or the transition would be, as what we spoke earlier, to have a higher level of interaction between the industry and academia. We could have industry experts getting involved in the curriculum design as students pass out in the 3rd and the 4th year of their engineering, is an example. The internships could become both ways, that students get into colleges to industries to work, and we could have faculty also going and working in industry, so that they understand and appreciate the need of what is the expectation of the industry, and then they come back and use those learnings that they have to effectively impart the training. We must have industry actually own up and integrate their needs with the academia. It is not fair to expect that every change would happen in academia and you will get a ready to use resource as they get into the industry. At the same time, the government and the regulators must be amenable to make changes in the curriculum which are more industry specific, and rather than being very prescriptive about what is the learning that they need to do from a curriculum perspective. I think we need it to happen on both sides. We are seeing some of these happen between specific companies and specific industries working with universities in the country already. IT is a good example for that. But we need more. We need more. Like I was explaining earlier, we have a very strong working with the banking community as Manipal, where we are trying to embed the banking curriculum as a part of the learning for students as they pass out. But I think you need a pan-India initiative in this, where all the industries, industry bodies, the academia, they get together and work seamlessly to ensure that students learn what is relevant from an employability standpoint and relevant from what the country needs at this point of time.
Let's round this interview off by talking about innovation in the education space. You have an MOU with Ujjivan, for example. You were talking about Coursera. You have a tie-up with Coursera. How do you innovate in the education space? And maybe you can tell us what the next few years are looking like.
Yeah, so at Manipal, to be specific to your question, we at Manipal Global, we have 2 clear streams in which we are in the education space. We have campuses across the globe, right from Antigua, where we do the medical school, to Dubai, to Malaysia, to Nepal, etc., where there are physical universities through which we are imparting higher education. We are also working very closely with the industry in the country, in India, where I talked to you a little while earlier about the academies. So we run, for instance, India's largest banking academy, where we train close to 25,000 bank officers every year in short and long term formats. We have now started off an academy for information technology. We have recently put up a school of data sciences and analytics. All these will be used very seamlessly, working with the industry to ensure that students as they pass out of our academy are industry ready and will hit the ground running day one. We have also moved significantly on the technology space. We are using most of our learning platforms today on EduNext, which is our LMS. We have launched a very large professional certification initiative called ProLearn, Manipal ProLearn, where we are offering online certification courses for professionals employed who want to upskill themselves or take an alternate skill to change their career. So our vision, if you will be to touch the entire ecosystem of learners in the higher education space, right from the campus stage to continuous learning to assessment and to skill, both in India and in the select geographies that I talked to you about. That is the plan that we have. We are progressing well on those plans, and obviously new geographies will get added, whether it is in South Asia or in Africa, as we go by in the coming years.
All right, thank you very much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. That was a conversation with Manipal Global Education Services. Do remember, if you have a company that wants to be featured here on the show, or you have any question about any aspect of your business, you can write in to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can personally tweet at me at Sunanda_J. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or call us on that number you see flashing on your screen. We promise to have all your questions answered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.